This is the Evolution Rage 3 sliding mitre saw. This machine can cut wood, plastic or metal with the one blade. The machine slides so you get a good length of cut. You can cut much wider materials on a machine like this than what you can with a standard chop saw. This particular saw will cut material about 11 inches deep. We'll start off with the front of the machine here. We've got a locking handle. If you unscrew that, press that lever in underneath, you can then change the saw to any angle you want. So you can mitre cut 45 degrees in either direction. Once you get it in the correct position, you can then lock the handle. That will then give you a precise cut. The clamping system is very easy to use. You can use that on the left hand side of the machine or the right hand side of the machine. Simply inserts in the hole at the back, and then there's a thumb screw which you then tighten up. So you put your material in position, you can then tighten the thumb screw at the back before tightening down the clamp. That will then hold the workpiece in position whilst you cut it. You can also get a front mounted clamp that goes in the holes that are pre-made on the machine. You can then tighten that up and hold your material that way from the front. That will also go in either side of the machine. On top of this machine we have an on-off switch for the laser. That is the guide that will show you exactly where the blade will be cutting. Once the laser is switched on, you then have a laser line that you can follow. That is where your cut is going to be on that piece of material. A good feature on this machine is the locking trigger. You can't actually pull the machine down until you pull that locking trigger in. Once that's in, you can then pull the machine down. That then exposes the blade. So that's a very good safety feature on this machine. The other trigger above is the switch that actually starts the machine. If you want to lock the cutting head down so that you can transport it, simply push in that trigger, push the machine down and then press in that orange button, and that will then lock the machine down in that position for carrying. If we undo this screw, it then enables the saw to slide on the linear bearings. If you need to transport the machine, you can lock that in that position and that will stop the machine from moving. On the top of the machine we have a dust extraction facility. That is handy if you are cutting wood or plastic. If you're cutting metal with it, you should put the plug in. That'll prevent any swarf from flying out through that hole. You do get a bag supplied with the machine. You can put the bag on there if you're cutting plastic or wood, and that will catch a lot of the dust. What I prefer to do is use the vacuum cleaner or the dust extractor. So if I'm cutting wood, I'll simply hook that up to the vacuum and that will remove quite a lot of the wood dust or the plastic dust. But whenever I'm cutting metal, I'll always place that plug in. That will stop any swarf from flying out the back of that. You also get an adapter with the kit that will enable you to use different size vacuum hoses with the saw. Because the machine is adjustable in quite a few places, I always like to check that the actual blade is square. So if you use an engineer's square and put it against the fence at the back, you can see that there's no gap there, so the blade is completely square in that orientation. We now just need to check it against the base of the machine, and that is straight as well. So you can see that that blade is perfectly straight for when we are cutting accurate cuts. I've now connected the machine up to the vacuum cleaner. I've put some safety glasses on, some ear defenders. I'm now going to cut this piece of acrylic, which is approximately 10 inches deep. That gave us a very good cut on that piece of acrylic, which is 10mm thick and 11 inches long. I'm now going to cut an 8x2 decking joist at 45 degrees. And as you can see, that's given us an extremely clean cut and that was very easy. A common problem with mitre saws is that you can't cut a mitre on a deep piece of material. So if you wanted to cut a mitre on something that deep, it's not possible because you can't actually get that depth of cut on this machine. So that is where the bevel comes in. You can do what's called a bevel cut. To do that, we need to undo this screw at the back here and slide that guide out of the way. We can then lock the screw again. We can then undo this lever and we can turn the machine until the guide there reaches 45 degrees, and then we can lock the lever. I've cut the two pieces using the bevel cut, and if we hold those together you can see that we've got the perfect mitre. We're now going to do a test on a piece of oak. As you can see, I've put the laser line exactly on the line that I want cutting, so the blade will follow that line exactly. Again, that's given us a nice clean cut. I'm now going to cut this piece of profiled aluminium using the same blade. I'm now going to put a full face visor on. It has cut that aluminium. It's obviously very cool, there's no heat there at all, and there are just a minimum amount of burrs on that material. So it's extremely good at cutting aluminium. Now I'm going to try a piece of uni-strut, which is galvanised steel. You can see that it's cut that very cleanly. It's actually cool to touch, and there is a minimum of burrs on the metal. To give it a real test, I'm going to try cutting this 6mm steel plate. This is approximately 8 inches long. As you can see, it has cut that very cleanly. It's cold to touch and there is minimal burrs on the material. So that is quite impressive. You have to be careful with some saws, you can damage the blade if you hit a nail. With this machine it doesn't matter, this is a piece of timber that's got quite a few nails in the end. We're now just going to cut a couple of inches off that. I'm pretty sure this machine will do this no problem. As you can see, it cut through those nails very easily indeed, with no damage to the machine. You can also adjust the depth of cut on this machine simply by adjusting this knob here. If you push that down and then winding that wheel until you get the blade to the correct depth, and then lock it, you can then set the depth at which the saw cuts. That is useful for when you are making certain types of joints. So that is another useful feature of the machine. If you don't want to use that, you can just flick that out of the way and then you can go to the full cutting depth. So that's the Evolution Rage 3 sliding mitre saw. I hope that's been of some use to you. Hopefully that will have pointed out all the features on this machine, and we've just shown its capabilities and shown you exactly some of the things that it can cut.